Symposium translated by Seth Bernardit Apollodorus. In my own opinion, I am not unprepared for what you ask about, for just the other day, when I was on my way up to town from my home in Phaleron, one of my acquaintances spotted me a long way off from behind and called, playing with his call, Phaleron, he said. "You there, Apollodorus, aren't you going to wait?" And I stopped and let him catch up. And he said, "Apollodorus, why, it was just recently that I was looking for you. I had wanted to question you closely about Agathon's party, the one at which Socrates, Alcibiades, and the others were then present at dinner together, to question you about the erotic speeches." "What were they?" Someone else who had heard about the party from Phoenix, the son of Philippus, was telling me about it, and he said that you two knew. As a matter of fact, there wasn't anything he could say with certainty. "So you tell me, for it is most just that you report the speeches of your comrade. But first," he said, "tell me, were you yourself present at this party or not?" And I said, "It really does seem as if there were nothing certain in what your informant told you, if you believe that this party which you are asking about occurred so recently that I too was present." "That is indeed what I believed," he said. "But how could that be, Glaucon?" I said. "Don't you know that it has been many years since Agathon resided here, but that it is scarcely 3 years now that I have been spending my time with Socrates and have made it my concern on each and every day to know whatever he says or does. Before that, I used to run round and round aimlessly, and though I believed I was doing something of importance, I was more miserable than anyone in the world, no less than you are at this moment, for I believed that everything was preferable to philosophy." And he said, "Don't mock me now. But tell me when this party did occur." And I said, "When we were still boys, at the time of Agathon's victory with his first tragedy, on the day after he and his choral dancers celebrated the victory sacrifice." "Oh," he said, "a very long time ago, it seems." "But who told you? Was it Socrates himself?" "No, by Zeus," I said, "but the same one who told Phoenix. It was a certain Aristodemus, Athenian, little and always unshod. He had been present at the party and, in my opinion, was the one most in love with Socrates at that time. Not, however, that I have not asked Socrates too about some points that I had heard from Aristodemus, and Socrates agreed to just what Aristodemus narrated." "Why, then," Glaucon said, "don't you tell me?" "The way to town, in any case, is as suitable for speaking, while we walk, as for listening. So as we walked, we talked together about these things, and so, just as I said at the start, I am not unprepared. If it must be told to you as well, that is what I must do. As for me, whenever I make any speeches on my own about philosophy or listen to others, apart from my belief that 1am benefited, how I enjoy it. But whenever the speeches are of another sort, particularly the speeches of the rich and of moneymakers, your kind of talk, then just as I am distressed, so do I pity your comrades, because you believe you are doing something of importance, but in fact it's all pointless. And perhaps you, in turn, believe that I am a wretch, and I believe you truly believe it. I, on the other hand, do not believe it about you, I know it. Comrade, you are always of a piece, Apollodorus, for you are always slandering yourself and others, and in my opinion you simply believe that, starting with yourself, everyone is miserable except Socrates. And how you ever got the nickname, Softy, I do not know, for you are always like this in your speeches, savage against yourself and others except Socrates. Apollodorus. My dearest friend, so it is plain as it can be, is it, that in thinking this about myself as well as you I am a raving lunatic. Comrade. It is not worthwhile, Apollodorus, to argue about this now, just do what we were begging you to do, tell what the speeches were. Apollodorus. Well, they were somewhat as follows, but I shall just try to tell it to you from the beginning as Aristodemus told it. He said that Socrates met him freshly bathed and wearing fancy slippers, which was not Socrates' usual way, and he asked Socrates where he was going now that he had become so beautiful. And he said, to dinner at Agathon's, for yesterday I stayed away from his victory celebration, in fear of the crowd, but I did agree to come today. It is just for this that I have got myself up so beautifully, that beautiful I may go to a beauty. But you, he said, how do you feel about going uninvited to dinner? Would you be willing to do so? And I said, he said, T shall do whatever you say. Then follow, he said, so that we may change and ruin the proverb, the good go to Agathon's feasts on their own. Homer, after all, not only ruined it, it seems, but even committed an outrage, hybris, on this proverb, for though he made Agamemnon an exceptionally good man in martial matters, and Menelaus a soft spearman, yet when Agamemnon was making a sacrifice and a feast, he made Menelaus come to the dinner uninvited, and inferior to his betters. He said that when he heard this he said, perhaps I too shall run a risk, Socrates, perhaps it is not as you say, but as Homer says, a good-for-nothing going uninvited to a wise man's dinner. Consider the risk in bringing me. What will you say in your defense? For I shall not agree that I have come uninvited, but shall say that it was at your invitation. With the two of us going on the way together, he said, we shall deliberate on what we shall say. Well, let us go. He said that once they had finished their conversation along these lines, they went on, and as they were making their way Socrates somehow turned his attention to himself and was left behind, and when Aristodemus waited for him, he asked him to go on ahead. When Aristodemus got to Agathon's house, he found the door open, and he said something ridiculous happened to him there. Straight off, a domestic servant met him and brought him to where the others were reclining, and he found them on the point of starting dinner. So Agathon, of course, saw him at once, and said, Aristodemus, you have come at a fine. The word beautiful, Carlos, which is distinct from good, Agathos, also means fair, fine, and noble, and everything outstanding in body, mind, or action can be so designated. What is lovable, either to sight or mind, is beautiful. It is the Greek term law what is moral, with the qualification that it designates what is beyond the sphere of obligation and duty, what one cannot expect everyone to do. It has a higher rank than the just. Soft Spearman is from Iliad, 17.587, The Uninvited Menelaus from 2.408, and With the Two of Us Going on the Way Together, from 10.224. Time to share a dinner. If you have come for something else, put it off for another time, as I was looking for you yesterday to invite you but could not find you. But how is it that you are not bringing our Socrates? And I turn around, he said, and do not see Socrates following anywhere. So one said that I myself came with Socrates, on his invitation to dinner here. It is a fine thing for you to do, Agathon said, but where is he? He was just coming in behind me. I am wondering myself where he might be. Go look, boy, Agathon said, and bring Socrates in. And you, Aristodemus, he said, lie down beside Eryximachus. And he said the boy washed him so he could lie down, and another of the boys came back to report. Your Socrates has retreated into a neighbor's porch and stands there, and when one called him, he was unwilling to come in. That is strange, Agathon said. Call him and don't let him go. And Aristodemus said that he said, no, no, leave him alone. That is something of a habit with him. Sometimes he moves off and stands stock still wherever he happens to be. He will come at once, I suspect. So do not try to budge him, but leave him alone. Well, that is what we must do, if it is your opinion, he said. Agathon said. Well now, boys, feast the rest of us. Though you always serve in any case whatever you want to whenever someone is not standing right over you, still now, in the belief that I, your master, as much as the others, has been invited to dinner by you, serve in such a way that we may praise you. After this, he said, they dined. But Socrates did not come in, and though Agathon often ordered that Socrates be sent for, Aristodemus did not permit it. Then Socrates did come in. He had lingered as long as was usual for him, when they were just about in the middle of dinner. Then he said that Agathon, who happened to be lying down at the far end alone, said, Here, Socrates, lie down alongside me, so that by my touching you, one too may enjoy the piece of wisdom that just occurred to you while you were in the porch. It is plain that you found it and have it, for otherwise you would not have come away beforehand. And Socrates sat down and said, It would be a good thing, Agathon, if wisdom were the sort of thing that flows from the fuller of us into the emptier, just by our touching one another, as the water in wine cups flows through a wool thread from the fuller to the emptier. For if wisdom too is like that, then I set a high price on my being placed alongside you, for I believe I shall be filled from you with much fair wisdom. My own may turn out to be a sorry sort of wisdom, or disputable like a dream, but your own is brilliant and capable of much development, since it has flashed out so intensely from you while you are young, and yesterday it became conspicuous among more than 30,000 Greek witnesses. You are outrageous, Socrates, Agathon said. A little later you and I will go to court about our wisdom, with Dionysus as judge, but now first attend to dinner. After this, he said, when Socrates had reclined and dined with the rest, they made libations, sang a song to the god and did all the rest of the customary rites, and then turned to drinking. Then Pausanias, he said, began to speak somewhat as follows. All right, men, he said. What will be the easiest way for us to drink? Now I tell you that I am really in a very bad way from yesterday's drinking, and I need a rest. I suspect many of you do too, for you were also here yesterday. So consider what will be the easiest way for us to drink. Aristophanes then said, that is a good suggestion, Pausanias, to arrange our drinking in some easier way, for I too am one of yesterday's soaks. Eryximachus, he said, the son of Acumenos, heard them out and then said, what a fine thing you say. But I still have need to hear from one of you, from Agathon, how set he is on heavy drinking. Not at all, Agathon said, nor do I have the strength. We seem to be in luck, Eryximachus said, myself, Aristodemus, Phaedrus, and those here, if you who have the greatest capacity for drink have now given up, for we are always incapable. And I leave Socrates out of account, as he can go either way, he will be content with whatever we do. Now, since in my opinion none of those present is eager to drink a lot of wine, perhaps I should be less disagreeable were I to speak the truth about what drunkenness is. For I believe this has become quite plain to me from the art of medicine. Drunkenness is a hard thing for human beings, and as far as it is in my power, I should neither be willing to go on drinking nor to advise another to do so, particularly if he still has a headache from yesterday's debauch. Well, as for myself, he said, Phaedrus the Myrrhenusian said, interrupting, I am used to obeying you, particularly in whatever you say about medicine, and now the rest will do so too, if they take good counsel. When they heard this, all agreed not to make the present party a drinking bout, but for each to drink as he pleased. Since, then, it has been decreed, Eryximachus said, that each is to drink as much as he wants to, and there is to be no compulsion about it, I next propose to dismiss the flute girl who just came in and to let her flute for herself, or, if she wants, for the women within, while we consort with each other today through speeches. And as to what sort of speeches, I am willing, if you want, to make a proposal. All then agreed that this was what they wanted and asked him to make his proposal. Eryximachus then said, the beginning of my speech is in the manner of Euripides' Melanippe, for the tale that I am about to tell is not my own, but Phaedrus here. On several occasions Phaedrus has said to me in annoyance, isn't it awful, Eryximachus, that hymns and paeans have been made by the poets for other gods, but for Eros, who is so great and important a god, not one of the many poets there have been has ever made even a eulogy. And if you want, consider, in their turn, the good sophists, they write up in prose praises of Heracles and others, as the excellent Prodicus does. Though you need not wonder at this, for I have even come across a volume of a wise man in which salt got a marvelous puff for its usefulness, and you might find many other things of the kind with eulogies. So they employ much zeal in things like that, yet to this day not one human being has dared to hymn Eros in a worthy manner, but so great a god lies in neglect. Now, Phaedrus, in my opinion, speaks well in this regard. So, as I desire to make a comradely loan to please him, it is, in my opinion, appropriate for those of the line from Euripides, mostly lost. Melanippe is, the tale is not my own but from my mother, and the fragment then goes on, how sky and earth were one shape, but when they were separated from one another, they gave birth to everything and sent them up into the light, trees, birds, wild beasts, those the salt sea nourishes, and the race of mortals, us who are now here to adorn the god. And if you share in my opinion, we should find enough of a pastime in speeches. For it is my opinion that each of us, starting on the left, should recite the fairest praise of Eros that he can, and Phaedrus should be the first to begin, inasmuch as he is lying on the head couch and is also the father of the argument. No one, Socrates said, will cast a vote against you, Eryxi, Marcius. For I would surely not beg off, as I claim to have expert knowledge of nothing but erotics, nor would Agathon and Paus, Agnias beg off, to say nothing of Aristophanes, whose whole activity is devoted to Dionysus and Aphrodite. And none of the others I see here would refuse either. And yet it is not quite fair for those of us who lie on the last couches, but if those who come first speak in a fine and adequate way, we shall be content. Well, good luck to Phaedrus then. Let him make a start and eulogize Eros. All the others then approved and urged it as Socrates had done. Now, Aristodemus scarcely remembered all that each and every one of them said, and I in turn do not remember all that he said, but I shall tell you the noteworthy points of those speeches that, in my opinion, most particularly deserved remembering. First of all, as I say, he said that Phaedrus began his speech at somewhat the following point, that Eros was a great and wondrous god among human beings as well as gods, and that this was so in many respects and not least in the matter of birth. For the god to be ranked among the oldest is a mark of honor, he said, and here is the proof. The parents of Eros neither exist nor are they spoken of by anyone, whether prose author or poet, but Hesiod says that chaos came first, then thereafter broad-breasted earth, always the safe seat of all, and Eros. 5 After chaos, he says, there came to be these two, earth and Eros. And Parmenides says that Genesis, first of all gods, devised Eros. 5 Hesiod, Theogony, lines 116, 117, 120. Our manuscripts of Hesiod read, after 117, of all immortals, who hold the tops of snowy Olympus, 118, and gloomy Tartarus in the recesses of the broad-wayed earth, 119. Line 118 is also not read by other sources, and the Hesiod Scholium says that line 119 is athetized. After Eros in line 120, Hesiod goes on, who is the most beautiful among the immortal gods, the dissolver of care, who overpowers the mind and thoughtful counsel in the breast of all gods and human beings. Cousilaus agrees with Hesiod as well. So there is an agreement in many sources that Eros is among the oldest. And as he is the oldest, we have him as the cause of the greatest goods, for I can hardly point to a greater good for someone to have from youth onward than a good lover, and for a lover, a beloved. For that which should guide human beings who are going to live fairly throughout their lives can be implanted by neither blood ties, nor honors, nor wealth, nor anything else as beautifully as by love. Now what do I say this is? It is shame in the face of shameful things and honorable ambition in the face of beautiful things, for without them neither city nor private person can accomplish great and beautiful deeds. So I assert that in the case of any real man who loves, were it to come to light that he was either doing something shameful or putting up with it from another out of cowardice and without defending himself, he would not be as pained on being observed by either his father, his comrades, or anyone else as by his beloved. We observe that this same thing holds in the case of the beloved. He is exceptionally shamed before his lovers whenever he is seen to be involved in something shameful. So if there were any possibility that a city or an army could be composed of lovers and beloveds, then there could be no better way for them to manage their own city, for they would abstain from all that is shameful and be filled with love of honor before one another. And besides, were they to do battle alongside one another, then even a few of this sort would win over just about all human beings, for a real man in love would of course far less prefer to be seen by his beloved than by all the rest when it comes to deserting his post or throwing away his weapons. He would choose to be dead many times over before that happened. And, to say nothing of leaving behind one's beloved or not coming to his aid when he is in danger, there is no one so bad that, once the god Eros had entered him, he would not be directed toward virtue, to the point where he is like one who is best by nature, and simply, as Homer said, the strength that the god breathed, into some of the heroes, Eros supplies from himself to lovers. And what is more, lovers are the only ones who are willing to die for the sake of another, and that is not only true of real men but of women as well. Alcestis, the daughter of Peleus, offers a sufficient testimony for Greeks on behalf of this argument. She alone was willing to die on behalf of her husband, though his father and mother were alive, but through her love she so much surpassed his parents in friendship that she showed them up as alien to their own son and only related to him in name. Her performance of this deed was thought to be so noble in the opinion not only of human beings but of the gods as well that, although there have been many who have accomplished many noble deeds, the gods have given to only a select number of them the guerdon of sending up their souls again from Hades, and hers they did send up in admiring delight at her deed. So gods, too, hold in particular esteem the zeal and virtue that pertain to love. Orpheus, the son of Eros, they sent back from Hades unfulfilled, and though they showed him a phantom of his wife, for whom he had come, they did not give her very self to him, because it was thought he was soft, like the lyre player he was, and had not dared to die for love like Alcestis, but contrived to go into Hades alive. Consequently, they imposed a punishment on him, and made him die at the hands of women, and did not honor him as they had Achilles, the son of Thetis. For Achilles they sent away to the Isles of the Blessed, because, though he had learned from his mother that he would be killed if he killed Hector, and that if he did not, he would return home and die in old age, still he dared to choose to come to the aid of his lover Patroclus, and with his vengeance accomplished, he dared not only to die on his behalf but to die after him who had died. On this account, the gods were particularly impressed and gave him outstanding honors, because he had made so much of his lover. Aeschylus talks nonsense in claiming that Achilles was in love with Patroclus, rather than the other way around, for Achilles was more beautiful than not only Patroclus but all the other heroes as well, and besides, he was unbearded, and thirdly, far younger than Patroclus, as Homer says. 7. Well, anyhow, though the gods really hold in very high esteem that virtue which concerns love, they wonder, admire, and confer benefits even more when the beloved has affection for the lover than when the lover has it for the beloved. A lover is a more divine thing than a beloved, for he has the God within him. This is the reason why they honored Achilles more than Alcestis and sent him to the Isles of the Blessed. So this is how I assert that Eros is the oldest, most honorable, and most competent of the gods with regard to the acquisition of virtue and happiness by human beings both when living and dead. He said that Phaedrus made some such speech, and after Phaedrus there were some others that he scarcely could recall. He passed them over and told of Pausanias' speech. He said that Pausanias said, "Phaedrus, in my opinion it is not noble the way the argument has been proposed to us, commanding us to eulogize Eros in so unqualified a fashion. For were Eros one, it would be noble, but as it is not noble, for he is not one, and as he is not one, it is more correct that it be declared beforehand which Eros is to be praised. So first I shall try to set the record straight, to point out the Eros who is to be praised, and then to praise him in a manner worthy of the god. We all know that there is no Aphrodite without Eros, and were she one, Eros would be one, but since there are two Aphrodites, it is necessary that there be two Erots as well. Who would deny that there are two goddesses? One surely is the elder and has no mother, the daughter of Uranos, the one to whom we apply the name Uranian. The other is younger and the daughter of Zeus and Dion, the one we call Pandemus. 8. So it is necessary that the Eros who is a fellow worker with one correctly be called Pandemus, and the other one, Uranian. Now all gods must be praised, but one must still try to say what has been allotted to each god. Every action is of the following sort: when being done in terms of itself, it is neither noble nor base. For example, what we are now doing, either drinking, singing, or conversing, none of these things is in itself a noble thing, only in terms of how it is done in the doing of it does it turn out to be the sort of thing that it is. For if it is done nobly and correctly, it proves to be noble, and if incorrectly base. So, too, in the case of loving an Eros, for Eros as a whole is not noble nor deserving of a eulogy, but only that Eros who provokes one to love in a noble way. Now the Eros who belongs to Aphrodite Pandemus is truly Pandemian and acts in any sort of way. And here you have the one whom good-for-nothing human beings have as their love. Those who are of the same sort as this Eros are, first of all, no less in love with women than with boys. Secondly, they are in love with their bodies rather than their souls. And thirdly, they are in love with the stupidest there can be, for they have an eye only to the act and are unconcerned with whether it is noble or not. That is how it happens that it turns out for them, however it turns out, with the same likelihood of its being good as the opposite. For Eros Pandemus depends on the Aphrodite who is far younger than the other goddess, and who partakes in her birth of female as well as of male. Pandemus, which is a cult title, literally means common to all the people, and does not necessarily mean something vulgar and base. Pandemian has the same meaning. But the other Eros is of Uranian Aphrodite, who, first of all, does not partake of female but only of male, and this is the love of boys, and secondly, is the elder and has no part in outrage. That is how it comes about that those inspired by this kind of love turn to the male, with an affection for that which is naturally more vigorous and has more sense. And one might recognize in pederasty itself those who have been prompted purely by this kind of love, for they do not love boys except when boys start having sense, and that is close to the time when the beard first appears. For those who start loving a boy at this point in time are in a position I believe to be with him and live with him for their whole life and not, once they have deceived and seized a young and foolish boy, to laugh at him and then run away to another. There should have been a law as well to prohibit the loving of boys, in order that a lot of zeal would not have been wasted for an uncertain result, for it is not clear where the perfection of boys has its end with regard to the vice and virtue of both soul and body. Now, the good willingly lay down this law upon themselves, but there should have been applied the same sort of compulsory prohibition to those Pandemian lovers, just as we compel them as far as we can not to love freeborn matrons. For here you have those who have made pederasty a disgrace, so that some have the nerve to say that it is shameful to gratify lovers. They say it is shameful with an eye to those Pandemian lovers, observing their impropriety and injustice, since surely any action whatsoever that is done in an orderly and lawful way would not justly bring reproach. Now in general the law about love in other cities is easy to understand, for it has been simply determined, but the law here and in Sparta is complicated. This is so, I suspect, in order that they might have no trouble in trying to persuade the young by speech, because they are incapable of speaking. In Ionia, on the other hand, and in many other places, wherever they live under barbarians, it has been customarily held to be shameful. In the eyes of barbarians, on account of their tyrannies, pederasty as well as philosophy and the love of gymnastics is shameful, for I suspect that it is not to the advantage of the rulers that great and proud thoughts be engendered among their subjects, any more than strong friendships and associations. It is precisely this that love, as well as all these other things, especially tends to implant. And the tyrants here, in Athens, actually learned this by deed, for the love of Aristogiton and the friendship of Harmodius, once it became firm, dissolved the tyrant's rule. 9. So wherever it has been laid down as shameful to gratify lovers, it has been through the vice of those who have done so, the hankering after more on the part of the rulers, and the lack of manliness on the part of their subjects, and wherever the gratifying of lovers has been held to be a fine thing without qualification, it has been through the slothfulness of soul of those who have so ordained. But here, in Athens, there are much finer customs than elsewhere, yet just as I said, they are not easy to understand. Let one just reflect that it is said to be a finer thing to love openly than in love makes a successful capture, it is thought to be fine, and if he fails, shake the lover the opportunity. Love is the beauty in peace, and weaker being might be entangle it in one another, and they must rise from the common, all who are to be lovers of Mrs. And all women who are sliced off from woman hardly pay attention to men but are rather turned toward women, and lesbians arise from this genus. But all who are male slices pursue the males, and while they are boys, because they are cutlets of the male, they are friendly to men and enjoy lying down together with and embracing men, and these are the best of boys and lads, because they are naturally the manliest. Some, to be sure, assert that such boys are shameless, but they lie. For it is not out of shamelessness that they do this but out of boldness, manliness, and masculinity, feeling affection for what is like to themselves. And there is a great proof of this, for once they have reached maturity, only men of this kind go off to political affairs. When they are fully grown men, they are pederasts and naturally pay no attention to marriage and procreation, but are compelled to do so by the law, whereas they would be content to live unmarried with one another. Now it is one of this sort who wholly becomes a pederast and passionate lover, always feeling affection for what is akin to himself. And when the pederast or anyone else meets with that very one who is his own half, then they are wondrously struck with friendship, attachment, and love, and are just about unwilling to be apart from one another even for a short time. And here you have those who continue through life with one another, though they could not even say what they want to get for themselves from one another. For no one would be of the opinion that it was sexual intercourse that was wanted, as though it were for this reason, of all things, that each so enjoys being with the other in great earnestness, but the soul of each plainly wants something else. What it is incapable of saying, but it divines what it wants and speaks in riddles. If Hephaestus with his tools were to stand over them as they lay in the same place and were to ask, "What is it that you want, human beings, to get for yourselves from one another?" And if in their perplexity he were to ask them again, "Is it this you desire, to be with one another in the very same place, as much as is possible, and not to leave one another night and day?" For if you desire that, I am willing to fuse you and make you grow together into the same thing, so that, though two, you would be one, and as long as you lived, you would both live together just as though you were one, and when you died, there again in Hades you would be dead together as one instead of as two. So see if you love this and would be content if you got it. We know that there would not be even one who, if he heard this, would refuse, and it would be self-evident that he wants nothing else than this, and he would quite simply believe he had heard what he had been desiring all along, in conjunction and fusion with the beloved, to become one from two. The cause of this is that this was our ancient nature and we were wholes. So love is the name for the desire and pursuit of the whole. And previously, as I say, we were one, but now through our injustice we have been dispersed by the God, just as the Arcadians were dispersed by the Spartans. There is the fear, then, that if we are not orderly in our behavior to the gods, we shall be split again and go around like those who are modeled in relief on stele, sword through our nostrils, like dice. For this reason every real man must be exhorted to be pious toward the gods in all his acts, so that we may avoid the one result and get the other, as Eros is our guide and general. Let no one act contrary to Eros, and he is contrary whoever brings the enemy And please don't let Eryximachus suppose, in making a comedy of my speech, that I and Agathon are both natural. For whatever our race would be the case, Agathon has spoken of the wide feet and every otherwise he would not be able to fold himself around everywhere, nor to be unobserved on first entering or on departing from every soul, if he were hard. The harmony of his figure is a great piece of evidence for his proportioned and supple appearance, and on all sides it is agreed that Eros is exceptionally harmonious, for lack of harmony and Eros are always at war with one another. The god's way of living among blooming flowers means that his complexion is beautiful, for Eros does not settle on what is fading and has passed its bloom, whether it be body or soul or anything else, but wherever a place is blooming and scented, there he settles and remains. Now this is enough about beauty as attributable to the god, though many points are still omitted, but Eros' virtue must next be spoken of. The greatest thing is that Eros neither commits injustice nor has injustice done to him, neither against a god nor by a god, neither against a human being nor by a human being. For it is not by violence that Eros is affected, if he is affected at all, for violence does not touch him, nor does he act with violence, for everyone of his own accord serves Eros in everything. And whatever anyone of his own accord agrees upon with another of his own accord, the royal laws of the city declare to be just. And besides the share he has in justice, he has his fullest share in moderation. For it is agreed that to be moderate means to dominate over pleasures and desires, but no pleasure is stronger than Eros, and if other pleasures are weaker, they will be dominated by Eros, and since it is he who is dominant, then in dominating pleasures and desires Eros must be exceptionally moderate. And besides, in point of courage, not even Ars resists Eros, for Ars does not possess Eros, for Aphrodite, as the story goes, but Eros Ars. And he who possesses is stronger than he who is possessed, and in dominating the bravest of all the rest, he must be the bravest. Now that the gods' justice, moderation, and courage have been mentioned, all that remains is wisdom, so, as far as I can, I must try to supply the omission. And first, that I too might honor our art as Eryximachus did his, the god is a poet of such wisdom that he can make poets of others too. At any rate, everyone whom Eros touches proves to be a poet, though he be without the muses before. We can, accordingly, properly make use of this fact to infer that in every kind of musical making, i.e., poetry, Eros is a good poet, maker, for what one does not have and does not know, one could neither give to another nor teach another. And who will oppose the fact that the making of all animals is nothing but Eros' wisdom, by which all the animals come to be and grow? And don't we know that, in the case of the arts, whomever this god teaches turns out to be renowned and conspicuous in craftsmanship, and that he whom Eros does not touch remains obscure? Archery, for example, medicine, and divination were invented by Apollo when desire and love were his guides, and thus he too must be a pupil of Eros, as are the muses in music, Hephaestus in blacksmithing, Athena in weaving, and Zeus are the captain of gods and human beings. So it is plain that, when Eros came to be among them, the affairs of the gods were arranged out of love of beauty, for there is no Eros present in ugliness. But before that, as I said at the start, many awesome events took place among the gods, as is said, through the monarchy of necessity, whereas since the birth of this god, all good things have resulted for gods as well as for human beings from loving the beautiful things. Thus Eros, in my opinion, Phaedrus, stands first, because he is the fairest and the best, and, after this, he is the cause for everyone else of the same sort of fair and good things. It occurs to me to say something in meter 2, that he is the one who makes peace among human beings, on the open sea calm and cloudlessness, the resting of winds and sleeping of care. He empties us of estrangement, he fills us with attachment, he arranges in all such gatherings as this our coming together with one another, in festivals, in dances, in sacrifices he proves himself a guide, furnishing gentleness, banishing wildness, loving giver of amity, no giver of enmity, gracious, good, spectacular to the wise, wonderful to the gods, enviable to the have-nots, desirable to the haves, father of luxury, splendor, glory, graces, yearning, and longing, caring for good ones, careless of bad ones, in toiling, in fearing, in longing, in speaking, the best governor, mariner, fellow warrior, and saviour, the ornament of all gods and human beings, the fairest and best guide, whom every real man must follow hymning beautifully, and sharing the song Eros sings in charming the thought of all gods and human beings. Here, Phaedrus, you have the speech from me, he said. Let it be dedicated to the god, sharing, as far as I am able, partly in playfulness, partly in measured earnestness. Aristodemus said that when Agathon had finished speaking, all those present applauded vigorously, as the youth had spoken in a way as suited to himself as to the god. Socrates then said, with a glance at Eryximachus, son of Acumenos, he said, "Is it your opinion that my long-standing fear was groundless, and that I was not prophetic, when I said before that Agathon would speak in a marvelous way, and that I should be at a loss?" In my opinion, Eryximachus said, your first point was indeed prophetic, that Agathon would speak well, but as to the other, that you would be at a loss, that I do not believe. You blessed innocent! How can you say that? Socrates said. Am I and anyone else whatsoever not to be at a loss after so fair and varied a speech has been made? Though the rest was not quite so marvelous, that bit at the end, who would not be thunderstruck on hearing the beauty of its words and phrases? I for my part, on reflecting that I myself should be unable to say anything nearly as beautiful, almost ran off at for having, and that but to arrange the middle. And I was quite filled with the thought that I should speak well, since I knew the truth about praising any L3A pun on Gorgias and Gorgon, whose head Odysseus was afraid Persephone would send against him if he lingered in Hades. Odyssey 11.632. Dread speaker also means skilled speaker, thing. But it was not this after all, it seems, that was meant by the fair praising of anything, but the attribution to the matter at hand of the greatest and fairest things possible, regardless of whether this was so or not. And if the praise were false, it was of no importance anyway, for the injunction was, it seems, that each of us should be thought to eulogize Eros, and not just eulogize him. It is for this reason, I suspect, that you leave no argument unturned and dedicate each and every argument to Eros. And you assert that he is of this sort and that sort and the cause of so many things, so that he may seem to be as beautiful and good as possible, plainly to those who do not know, for this surely is not the case for those who do know, and so the praise turns out to be beautiful and awesome. But after all, I did not know that this was to be the manner of praise, and in ignorance I came to an agreement with you that I would take my turn in praising. So the tongue promised, but the mind did not. 14. Let me then call it quits. I am not a eulogist in this fashion, I am simply incapable of it. Not that 1 am unwilling, on the contrary I am willing, if you want, to tell the truth on my own terms, so long as my words are not to be compared with your speeches, lest I be laughed at. Decide, then, Phaedrus, if you have any need for such a speech too, for hearing the truth being said about Eros, even though the phrasing and arrangement of the sentences just fall as they come. He said that Phaedrus and the others urged Socrates to speak in whatever way he himself believed he had to speak. Allow me further, Phaedrus, he said, to ask Agathon about a few small points, in order that when I have got him to agree with me I can go ahead and speak. Well, I allow it, Phaedrus said. Ask. After this he said that Socrates began from somewhat the following point. Well, dear Agathon, in my opinion you made a fine start to your speech, in saying that one had to show first what sort of being Eros himself is, and then his deeds. One very much admired this beginning. So come now, since you have explained fairly and magnificently all the rest about what sort he is, then tell me this as well about Eros. Is Eros the sort that is love of something or of nothing? 1 am not asking whether he is of a mother or of a father, for the question whether Eros is love of mother or father would be laughable, but just as if I asked about this very word, father, is the father father of someone or not? You should I for Euripides. Hippolytus, 6:12, the tongue swore, but the mind did not. Doubtless tell me, if you wanted to give a fair reply, that the father is father of a son or daughter. Isn't that so? Of course, Agathon said. And the same is true of the mother. This too was agreed upon. Answer me just a little more, Socrates said, so that you might come to understand better what one want. Suppose I asked, what about this point? Is a brother, just in terms of what he is, a brother of someone, or isn't he? He answered that he is. And of a brother or a sister, right? He agreed. Do try, then, he said, to tell about love as well. Is Eros love of nothing or something? Of course he is of something. Keep this fast in your memory, this something of which you claim he is, Socrates said, but now say only this much, that Eros, that is the love of something, does he desire this something or not? Of course he does, he said. And is it when he has, or does not have, that which he desires and loves, that he desires and loves it? It is at least likely that he does not have it, he said. Think, Socrates said, is it not a necessity rather than a likelihood that the desirous thing desires what it is in need of, and does not desire unless it is in need? For in my opinion, Agathon, it is a marvelous necessity. What is your opinion? It's my opinion too, he said. What you say is fair. Would anyone want to be tall if he were tall, or strong if he were strong? From what has been agreed upon, that would be impossible. For he purely would not be in need of those things that he already is. What you say is true. So that if he wanted to be strong being strong, Socrates said, and swift being swift, and healthy being healthy, I say this so that we may not deceive ourselves, for one might perhaps suppose with regard to these and all cases of this sort that those who are of this sort and have these things desire those things that they have, but if you have these cases in mind, Agathon, then who would desire each of those things that of necessity he has at the moment when, whether he wants to or not, he has it? For whenever anyone says, I am healthy and want to be healthy, or I am wealthy and want to be wealthy, and I desire those very things that I have, we should tell him, you, human being, possessing wealth, health, and strength, want to possess them also in the future, since at the present moment at least, whether you want to or not, you have them. Consider then, whenever you say, I want the present things, if you mean anything else than, I want the things of the present moment to be present also in future time. Would he agree to that? Aristodemus said that Agathon consented. Socrates then said, to want that those things be safe and present for him in future time, is to love that which is not yet at hand for him and which he does not have. Of course, he said. So he and everyone else who desires what is not at hand desires what is not present, and what he does not have and what he himself is not and what he is in need of, it is things like that of which desire and love are, right? Of course, he said. Come then, Socrates said. Let us draw up an agreement about what has been said. Eros is love, first of all, of some things, and secondly, of whatever things the need for which is present to him. Yes, he said. Would you now think back then to what you asserted Eros to be of in your speech, but if you want, I shall remind you. I believe you spoke somewhat along these lines, that matters were arranged by the gods through love of beautiful things, for there would not be love of ugly things. Weren't you speaking somewhat along these lines? I said so, Agathon said. And what you say is reasonable, comrade, Socrates said. And if this is so, Eros would be nothing else than love of beauty, but not of ugliness. He agreed. Hasn't it been agreed that that of which one is in need and does not have one loves? Yes, he said. So Eros is in need of and does not have beauty. Of necessity, he said. What about this? That which is in need of beauty and in no way possesses beauty, do you say that it is beautiful? Certainly not. Do you still agree then that Eros is beautiful, if this is so? And Agathon said, It's probable, Socrates, that I knew nothing of what I had said. And yet spoke you beautifully, Agathon, he said. But, still, tell me about a small point. Are the good things beautiful as well in your opinion? Yes, in mine. So if Eros is in need of beautiful things, and the good things are fair, he would be in need of the good things as well. I, Socrates, he said, would not be able to contradict you, so let it be as you say. Not at all, my dear Agathon. It is rather that you are unable to contradict the truth, he said, since it is not at all hard to contradict Socrates. And I shall let you go for now, and turn to the speech about Eros that I once heard from a woman, Diotima of Mantinea. She was wise in these and many other things. When the Athenians once made a sacrifice before the plague, she caused the onset of the disease to be delayed 10 years, and she is the very one who taught me erotics. The speech that she was wont to make, I shall now try to tell you all on the basis of what has been agreed on between Agathon and myself, and I shall try to do it on my own, as best I can. For just as you explained, Agathon, one must first tell who Eros himself is and what sort he is, and then tell his deeds. In my opinion, it is easiest to do this in just the same way that the stranger once did in quizzing me. For I came pretty near, in speaking to her, to saying the same sort of things that Agathon said to me now, that Eros was a great god, and was the love of beautiful things. She then went on to refute me with those same arguments with which I refuted him, that he is neither beautiful, according to my argument, nor good. And I said, How do you mean it, Diotima? Is Eros after all ugly and bad? And she said, Hush. Or do you believe that whatever is not beautiful must necessarily be ugly? Absolutely. And whatever is not wise, without understanding? Or were you unaware that there is something in between wisdom and lack of understanding? What is this? Don't you know, she said, that to opine correctly without being able to give an account, logos, is neither to know expertly, for how could expert knowledge be an unaccounted for, allegon, matter? Nor lack of understanding, for how could lack of understanding be that which has hit upon what is? But surely correct opinion is like that, somewhere between intelligence and lack of understanding. What you say is true, I said. Then do not compel what is not beautiful to be ugly, or what is not good, to be bad. So too, since you yourself agree that Eros is not good or beautiful, do not at all believe that he must be ugly and bad, she said, but something between the two of them. And yet, I said, it is agreed on by all that he is a great god. Do you mean by all who do not know, she said, or by those who know? No, by all together. And she said with a laugh, and how, Socrates, could he be agreed to be a great god by those who deny even that he is a god? Who are these? I said. You are one, she said, and I am one. And I said, how can you say this? I said. And she said, it's easy. Tell me, don't you assert that all gods are happy and beautiful? Or would you dare to deny that any one of the gods is beautiful and happy? By Zeus, one would not, I said. But don't you mean by the happy precisely those who possess the good things and the beautiful things? Of course. And do you hold to the agreement that Eros out of need for the good and beautiful things desires those very things of which he is in need? Yes, I hold to it. How then could he who is without a share in the beautiful and good things be a god? In no way, it seems. Do you see then, she said, that you too hold that Eros is not a god? What would Eros then be? I said. A mortal? Hardly that. Well, what then? Just as before, she said, between mortal and immortal. What is that, Diotima? A great demon. Socrates, for everything demonic 15 is between God and mortal. 15 demonic, daemonian, is either a neuter diminutive of daimon or a neuter adjective, related to daimon as divine, dion, is to God, theos. This neuter, in any case, is the theme of the dialogue up to Socrates' speech that concludes with a vulgar and low. With what kind of power? I said. Interpreting and ferrying to gods things from human beings and to human beings things from gods, the requests and sacrifices of human beings, the orders and exchanges for sacrifices of gods, for it is in the middle of both and fills up the interval so that the whole itself has been bound together by it. Through this proceeds all divination and the art of the priests who deal with sacrifices, initiatory rituals, incantations, and every kind of soothsaying and magic. A god does not mingle with a human being, but through this occurs the whole intercourse and conversation of gods with human beings while they are awake and asleep. And he who is wise in things like this is a demonic man, but he who is wise in anything else concerning either arts or handicrafts is vulgar and low. These diamonds are many and of all kinds, and one of them is Eros. Who is his father? I said, and who is his mother? It is rather long, she said, to explain, but I shall tell you all the same. When Aphrodite was born, all the other gods as well as Poros, resource, the son of Metis, intelligence, were at a feast, 16, and when they had dined, Peenia, poverty, arrived to beg for something, as might be expected at a festivity, and she hung about near the door. Then Poros got drunk on nectar, for there was not yet wine, and, heavy of head, went into the garden of Zeus and slept. Then Peenia, who because of her own lack of resources was plotting to have a child made out of Poros, reclined beside him and conceived Eros. It is for this reason that Eros has been the attendant and servant of Aphrodite, as he was conceived on her birthday, for he is by nature a lover in regard to the beautiful, and Aphrodite is beautiful. So because Eros is the son of Poros with Peenia, his situation is in some such case as this. First of all, he is always poor, and he is far from being tender and beautiful, as the many believe, but is tough, squalid, shoeless, and homeless, always lying on the ground without a blanket or a bed, sleeping in doorways and along waysides in the open air. He has the nature of his mother, always dwelling with neediness. But in accordance with his father he plots to trap the beautiful and the good, and is courageous, stout, and keen, a skilled hunter, always weaving devices, desirous of practical wisdom and inventive, philosophizing through all his life, a skilled magician, druggist, sophist. L6 Metis is the first goddess Zeus marries after the wars among the gods are over. He is warned in time not to allow her child Athena to be born, lest Athena's children overthrow him. He swallows Metis, and Athena is later born from the head of Zeus. See Hesiod, Theogony, 886–900. And his nature is neither immortal nor mortal, but sometimes on the same day he flourishes and lives, whenever he has resources, and sometimes he dies, but gets to live again through the nature of his father. And as that which is supplied to him is always gradually flowing out, Eros is never either without resources nor wealthy, but is in between wisdom and lack of understanding. For here is the way it is, no one of the gods philosophizes and desires to become wise, for he is so, nor if there is anyone else who is wise, does he philosophize. Nor, in turn, do those who lack understanding philosophize and desire to become wise, for it is precisely this that makes the lack of understanding so difficult, that if a man is not beautiful and good, nor intelligent, he has the opinion that that is sufficient for him. Consequently, he who does not believe that he is in need does not desire that which he does not believe he needs. Then who, Diotima, Other philosophizers once said, if they are neither the wise nor those who lack understanding. By now it is perfectly plain even to a child, she said, that they are those between them both, of whom Eros would be one. For wisdom is one of the most beautiful things, and Eros is love in regard to the beautiful, and so Eros is, necessarily, a philosopher, and as a philosopher he is between being wise and being without understanding. His manner of birth is responsible for this, for he is of a wise and resourceful father, and an unwise and resourceless mother. Now the nature of the demon, dear Socrates, is this, but as for the one whom you believe to be Eros, it is not at all surprising that you had this impression. You believed, in my opinion, as I conjecture from what you say, that the beloved is Eros, and is not that which loves. It is for this reason, I believe, that Eros seemed to you to be wholly beautiful. For the beloved thing is truly beautiful, delicate, perfect, and most blessed, but that which loves has another kind of look, the sort that I just explained. And I said, all right, stranger, what you say is fine. If Eros is of this sort, of what use is he for human beings? It is this, Socrates, she said, that I shall next try to teach you. Now, Eros is of that sort and was born in that way, and he is of the beautiful things, as you assert. But what if someone were to ask us, what about those beautiful things of which Eros is, Socrates and Diotima? It is more clearly expressed as follows, he who loves the beautiful things loves, what does he love? And I said, that they be his. But the answer, she said, still longs for the following sort of question, what will he have who gets the beautiful things? I said that I was hardly capable of giving a ready answer to this question. Well, she said. What if someone changed his query and used the good instead of the beautiful? Come, Socrates, the lover of the good things loves, what does he love? That they be his, one said. And what will he who gets the good things have? This, I said, I can answer more adequately, he will be happy. That, she said, is because the happy are happy by the acquisition of good things, and there is no further need to ask, for what consequence does he who wants to be happy want to be so? But the answer is thought to be a complete one. What you say is true, I said. This wanting and this Eros, do you suppose they are common to all human beings, and all want the good things to be theirs always, or how do you mean it? That way, I said. They are common to all. Why is it, then, Socrates, she said, that we deny that everyone loves, given, that is, that everyone loves the same things and always, but we say that some love and some do not? I too, I said, am amazed. Well, she said, don't persist in your amazement, for we detach from Eros a certain kind of Eros and give it the name Eros, imposing upon it the name of the whole, while in the other cases we employ several different names. What are those? I said. Like the following, you know that making has a wide range, for you see, every kind of making is responsible for anything whatsoever that is on the way from what is not to what is. And thus all the productions that are dependent on the arts are makings, and all the craftsmen engaged in them are makers. What you say is true. But nevertheless, she said, you know that not all craftsmen are called makers but have other names, and one part is separated off from all of making, that which is concerned with music and meters, and is addressed by the name of the whole. For this alone is called poetry, and those who have this part of making are poets. What you say is true, I said. So too in the case of Eros. In brief, Eros is the whole desire of good things and of being happy, the greatest and all-beguiling Eros. But those who turn toward it in many other ways, in terms of either money-making, love of gymnastics, or philosophy, are neither said to love nor called lovers, whereas those who earnestly apply themselves to a certain single kind, get the name of the whole, love, and are said to love and called lovers. What you say is probably true, I said. And there is a certain account, she said, according to which those who seek their own halves are lovers. But my speech denies that Eros is of a half or of a whole, unless, comrade, that half or whole can be presumed to be really good, for human beings are willing to have their own feet and hands cut off, if their opinion is that their own are no good. For I suspect that each does not cleave to his own, unless one calls the good one's own and belonging to oneself, and the bad alien to oneself, since there is nothing that human beings love other than the good. Or is it your opinion that they do? No, by Zeus, I said, that is not my opinion. Then, she said, is it to be said unqualifiedly that human beings love the good? Yes, I said. What about this? Mustn't it be added, she said, that they love the good to be theirs? It must be added. And not only that it be theirs, she said, but always as well. This too must be added. So, in sum, she said, Eros is of the good being one's own always. What you say is most true, I said. Since Eros is always this, she said, then in what manner and in what activity would the earnestness and intensity of those who pursue the good be called Eros? What in fact are they doing when they act so? Can you tell? If I could, Diotima, then I should not, you know, in admiration of your wisdom, I said, resort to you to learn this very thing. Well, I shall tell you, she said. Their deed is bringing to birth in beauty both in terms of the body and in terms of the soul. Whatever it is that you mean, I said, is in need of divination, and I do not begin to understand. Well, I shall speak more clearly, she said. All human beings, Socrates, she said, conceive both in terms of the body and in terms of the soul, and whenever they are at a certain age, their nature desires to give birth, but it is incapable of giving birth in ugliness, but only in beauty, for the being together of man and woman is a bringing to birth. This thing, pregnancy and bringing to birth, is divine, and it is immortal in the animal that is mortal. It is impossible for this to happen in the unfitting, and the ugly is unfitting with everything divine, but the beautiful is fitting. So Kalon, beauty, is the Moira, fate, and Eileithyia 17 for birth. It is for these reasons that whenever the pregnant draws near to beauty, it becomes glad and in its rejoicing dissolves and then gives birth and produces offspring. But whenever it draws near to ugliness, then, downcast and in pain, it contracts inwardly, turns away, shrinks up, and does not produce offspring, but checking the course of the pregnancy, has a hard time of it. So this is why someone who is pregnant, with breasts already swelling, flutters so much around the beautiful, because the one who has the beautiful releases him from great labor pains. For Eros is not, Socrates, she said, of the beautiful, as you believe. Well, what then? It is of engendering and bringing to birth in the beautiful. All right, I said. It is more than all right, she said. And why is Eros of engendering? Because engendering is bomb forever and is immortal as far as that can happen to a mortal being. From what has been agreed to, it is necessary to desire immortality with good, provided Eros is of the goods always being one's own. So it is necessary from this argument that Eros be of immortality too. All of these things she used to teach me whenever she made her speeches about erotics.